everybody, what's good? I'm your host and my name is Professor Khalil Amani, and it's been a minute because I've just been resting and relaxing. Had a whirlwind 6-day vacation by myself. Went to Tampa, Miami, Daytona Beach. Oh, it was fun. It was fun. But we're back, and it's time to get back to teaching. I'm especially happy because I got my glasses here. These are my Versace frames that the last time I was in Tampa, Florida, about 3 years ago, I left these glasses at my son's apartment, and he held them for 3 years, so we got them back. Again, these are my Versace. These are my Versace. Oh, these are old. These glasses are these frames probably about 15 years old. Oh, easily 15 years old. But one of my goals when I went to Tampa was to get my Versace frames back, and I got them. And they are prescription, and I can still wear them. I still see everything. So I'm happy to have these frames back. You know, it's got those they call those crystals on the side. But some of the crystals are falling out. As you can see, some of the crystals have fallen out. Swarovski crystals, that's what they call them. Swarovski crystals. But I got them back. So I'm rocking them. Thank you, son, for holding them for 3 years. We back, and we're going to teach now. We're going to start a series. End time. What these folks like to call eschatology. Eschatology. That's right. We're going to teach on it. Now, of course, my enemies are going to absolutely come on camera, and they're going to say, I'm going behind them. I'm going behind their teaching. Whatever. The reality is, things like eschatology or end time conversation, end time prophecy, is something I've talked about, studied, read years ago. But what I do that they don't do is that I don't come to you talking about this so-called end times like I know the truth and when shit's gonna jump off, because I don't know. I said I don't know. It might be just a bunch of malarkey bullshit, or there might be some truth to it. I mean, here's the thing, people. If these Bible teachers would cover these subjects thoroughly and cogently, there would be no need for me to so-called come behind them. But they do a sloppy job of talking about end-time prophecies. They do a half-assed job of talking about Bible prophecies. They do a shitty job. They don't want to get down to the nuts and bolts of the Bible conversation as it relates to, when is Jesus coming back? They don't know how to do series. They don't know how to go step by step. They don't know how to start from the beginning and work their way through. And so you have some of these Bible teachers talking about eschatology and end time prophecy, starting with the biggest word, eschatology. They don't even give you the definition of the word eschatology. a Greek word that means the end times. I watched one YouTuber recently talk to another YouTuber, and the one YouTuber asked, well, don't the Bible talk about what's going to happen in the New Testament? And Jesus' disciples asked him what's going to happen in the end times. She was actually on to something. But when you don't know how to teach Bible, you want to jump all the way over into Daniel and chapter 9. Talk about the abomination of desolation. You want to talk about the great kingdoms that shall come, rise and fall. You don't know how to start from ground level and work your way through this. And so they argue and bicker back and forth, and he don't know where the scripture's at. She don't know where the scripture's at. They just arguing about shit. Nobody's really got any really good information. They don't even give you the history of those who have come before them, who were eschatological giants, who were end-time giants, who really seem to have a good grasp on what the Bible says about the end times. So we're going to talk about it. Mind you, I'm not a Jew, I'm not an Israelite, I'm not a Christian, and I'm not a Muslim. I'm none of the Abrahamic faiths. I don't subscribe to the Abrahamic faiths. And therefore, as an outsider, I can look into that, to the various understandings, and give you a good general understanding of what the Bible seems to say about the end times. Now, the end times is a fascinating subject. It is a subject that many think they know about, but very few know about it. And those very few that think they know about it, they guessing, they're speculating, they're rolling around in the mud of theory and hypothesis. Because truly, none of us know if the shit is real or if we're in the end times. None of us know. But these religious types, these Hebrew Israelites and these Christian types, these Israelite types, these Israelite Christian types, they think they got it down to a science. They think they understand the sign of the times. They think they understand the sign of the times. Matter of fact, do I see it over there? Prince had an album out. Let me see if I can find it. Prince has an album. It's called The Sign of the Times. Let's see, can I find it real quick? Here it is.
So Colorado probably just did the coolest thing I've seen any state do in a while.
Yeah, turn that off.
Home in Colorado.
We're gonna turn you off. I said Prince had a whole album. It was called Sign of the Times. Here it is. This is Prince's album. One of my favorites. On the back right here. Sign of the Times. Sign of the Times. Let me look at this album real quick and just see what. Yeah, on the album right there, it says it also. Right where my finger's at. Sign of the Times. Alright. I like making references like this. Beautiful references. What a great album. This is two albums came in this. My man Prince. My man Prince. That's one. And let's see the other one. My man Prince. What a handsome fellow he was. My man Prince. Sign of the Times. And so, you have Bible teachers out here in your homes, in your congregations, when you go to church, on YouTube, what have you, that talk with such great authority. I say there are YouTube Bible teachers, there are Christian pastors and preachers and reverends, there are Hebrew Israelite elders and teachers that talk with such great authority as though they are 100% sure that the way they understand the end of the world and the sign of the times, eschatology, that's the scholarly word for this stuff, eschatology. They are so sure that they teach it and they preach it as gospel truth. Yes, they do. Well, in this introduction, I am not here to say that anything I'll present to you is the truth. Even though I believe that I have a better grasp on the information of the study of eschatology and the end of the world than most of these people. Certainly the bum-ass YouTubers that you hear talking eschatology and end time preterism and all that bullshit, I'm far, far more advanced on this subject than they. I'm not trying to toot my own horn. I just know what it is. And so the first thing we should probably talk about as we go into this series are those who led the way and led the charge in trying to understand the end times. I mean, I don't know what it is. Well, I kind of do know what it is. What it is that especially YouTube Bible teachers, they want to come on YouTube and act like they founded this information on end time prophecies. They use big, beautiful, scholarly words like eschatology that should be a sign to you all that they are only regurgitating some shit that other Christian scholars have dealt with years and years and decades ago, even centuries ago. But when bum-ass YouTube teachers want to take credit for their Bible end-time teaching, they don't talk about those on whom they built their so-called Bible scholarship. Sometimes they don't know, and that's why they don't show. I mean, there have been many a men that have claimed to know the future. All kind of prophets and seers and shaman, dreamers and griots, apostles, witches and warlocks, prognosticators, wizards, everybody. There's a whole lot of people over the centuries who think they could see into the future. I said there have been many that have come along. Many wizards, many prognosticators, many prophets, many seers, many shaman, many witches and warlocks, many messengers, apostles, dreamers, and griots have come along throughout human history and claim that they could see. They had a vision of the future. Oh yeah. They had a vision of the future. I claim to be somewhat prophetic. I have made some bold claims, not so much of a religious nature in the past, but I made some bold claims regarding music and hip hop and gay rappers and stuff like that that came to fruition. That I said it way back in 2009 to the LA Times, to Spin Magazine, and sure enough, it happened. It makes me prophetic. It makes me a prophet. Maybe not in the religious, spiritual sense, but if you can see something coming down the road and speak on it before it happens, and then it happens, you're prophetic. But I would argue that the greatest prophet was not Daniel in the Old Testament Hebrew Bible. That the greatest prophecies ever done was not out of the mouth of brother Jesus Christ. No, 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 no. The greatest prophecies that are documented are from a man we know as Nostradamus. I have his book right here. The Prophecies of Nostradamus. You see, this is what separates me from the motley crew of miscreants on YouTube that want to talk prophecy. Most of them already are indoctrinated to a particular book, Bible, a particular religion, Israelite, so forth, Christian, so forth. But I'm here to give you the background on the ideal of prophecy. Nobody did prophecy better than the great Nostradamus. Go check the record. Nostradamus, even according to many who read his quatrains, who read his work, believe that he even predicted World War I, World War II. He even called Hitler's name, calling him Hister. Now this man lived in the 1400s. I said he lived in the 1400s. Let me make sure it's over the 1500s. 1500s. Born in December 1503. He was born in 1503. So he lived in the 1500s. Born in 1503. And a man born in 1503 calls Adolf Hitler's name with a little bit of variation, calls his name Hister instead of Hitler. That's how close and how accurate Nostradamus is. Some of you might remember the Dave Chappelle skit where he had a comedian on there. He had a comedian on there who called himself Negrodamus. And if you didn't know who Nostradamus is, you really wouldn't get it. But the Dave Chappelle show and the character that one of the actors did of Negrodamus was based on Nostradamus. Now you know. So if you didn't know, now you know. All right. So he would be the greatest, greater than Daniel, greater than Jesus. This man's predictions, I mean, he predicted a lot of stuff that actually came to fruition. Has anyone told you all about And Nostradamus wasn't particularly a religious person, but he was a great seer. He was a great soothsayer. He was a great dreamer, a great shaman, a great prophet, a great prognosticator. Put that on the side. That's where we start, with the greatest of the great prognosticators. You should go read the works of Nostradamus. They are called quatrains. Instead of verses, he has something called quatrains. But this wanting to know the future is kind of like man's quest, the holy grail of eternity. This wanting to know the end time, the last day before the Big Bang, it's something that mankind has engaged in since man began to want to write with the pen and the scroll and the paper. We always want to know about those last days. Another one of the great end time eschatological preachers was the lady who founded the Seventh-day Adventist movement. That's right. Her name was Ellen G. White, and this is probably it's a bestseller. It's called America in Prophecy, and it's by E.G. White or Ellen G. White. This book is a staple in understanding Bible prophecy, at least from the point of view of the Seventh-day Adventists. I'm showing you these books so that when Negroes and niggas on YouTube try to come and say, I'm going behind them, I'm going behind their conversation, it might be true to some degree. But the bigger, badder point is that I, by virtue of showing you these books, have been a student of Bible prophecy for a long time. They haven't brought up, these Bible teachers, they haven't mentioned Nostradamus. They don't respect Nostradamus because they don't respect anything outside the Bible. I said Ellen G. White's America in Prophecy is one of the great works on biblical prophecy from the Seventh-day Adventist point of view. Another great book, which I don't know what happened to the cover of it, is called Armageddon. The cover's gone off of, but it's called Armageddon. Another great book for those of you who are interested in end-time Bible prophecy. This is what I do. I don't just turn on my camera and yap and act like I know it all. I tell you and direct you who and where you can go if you're interested in Bible conversation in end-time prophecy. Armageddon, Appointment with Destiny. These are the books you need to read if you're really, really interested in the end of the world. These people out here talking about end-time prophecy, all they got is the Bible, and then they want to try to interpret it as though they got it down to a science, and what they say is the absolute truth. And it ain't. It's a Christian perspective. It's an Israelite perspective. It is their own warped concoction of a perspective. Another great book, perhaps one of the great foundational books on modern eschatology, a book by Hal Lindsey called The Late Great Planet Earth. The Late Great Planet Earth by Hal Lindsey. This is a staple in Bible prophecy. This is a staple in eschatology. I know you're just now hearing about it because those that want to talk about eschatology, they don't know shit about it and they don't own the books to point you in the direction of your studies. They want to simply tell you what they believe is going to be the end of the world and the end times without understanding what the great minds of eschatology, the great minds of end time biblical conversation have dug up and what they say. If you ain't read this book and you talking about eschatology, then you ain't talking about nothing. Hal Lindsey's The Late Great Planet Earth is a staple in understanding end time prophecy. And so while my detractors, while my YouTube haters, while those that think I'm running behind them to teach what they've taught, they ain't taught shit. They've only scratched the surface and brought up a subject, but they ain't got the goods. They don't show you stuff like this. They don't show you stuff like this. I have to reiterate that because I know they will come on and say, look at him now. Look at him now. Now he's talking about our end time Bible conversation. But you ain't got the books, which means it's new to you. And I've had the books for 30, 35, 40 years, which means it's not new to me. And that's a fact. You might be the one that sparked the conversation, but the reality is some of these YouTubers, they can't delve into the conversation. Another great book, The Reappearance of the Christ and the Masters of Wisdom. This is what I do, y'all. And that's by Benjamin Cream. But this is what I do. You got these Bible teachers that want to come on and talk about eschatology, end time prophecy, end of the world, yet they don't point nowhere outside of the Bible. And they look down, they thumb their nose up at the real masters of this subject. And they want you to strictly believe what they are saying as it relates to the end of the world. Why won't they show you outside sources? You know why? Because they don't have the books. You know why? Because they are babies and neophytes. You know why? Because they just started studying this stuff. And so while they might say, I'm chasing their scholarship, I'm chasing their conversation, how am I chasing their conversation when I can really go into the conversations that they bring up by pulling books like these off my shelf, which means I was interested in this stuff years and decades before they were. These books are older than 1996. Yeah. Before they began to understand and want to talk about Bible prophecy, these books were already in circulation. And Khalil Amani had already delved into them way back in the mid to late 80s into the 90s. I know they hate it. they hate it. As eschatology goes, as end-time preachers go, there are a few people you might want to, if you are of the Christian, Judeo-Christian, Israelite ilk, you got to go back and you should probably study and read the works of the greats, like the great Herbert W Armstrong. Herbert W Armstrong, born 1892. I got it up there. And died in 1986. Herbert W Armstrong was perhaps the father of the neo-Christian eschatological movement. Herbert W Armstrong was one of the greats when it came to Bible prophecies. Herbert W Armstrong was huge. You don't know who Herbert W Armstrong was? He was huge. Herbert W Armstrong was on radio and TV. Herbert W Armstrong was on over 382 TV stations. Herbert W Armstrong was known internationally in 36 countries. Herbert W Armstrong was bigger than a lot of the preachers you might have heard on TV. Herbert W Armstrong was bigger than Jerry Falwell. Excuse me. Herbert W Armstrong was bigger than Jimmy Swaggart. Herbert W Armstrong was bigger than Oral Roberts. And Herbert W Armstrong was bigger than Jim Baker. Now, if you don't know who Jerry Falwell, Jimmy Swaggart, Oral Roberts, and Jim Baker are and were, if you don't know them, then I would suggest that you don't watch, or you didn't watch, Sunday religious programming. Those are mega preachers. I said, the dude, the preacher man that dealt with end-time prophecies, the great, or the late great Herbert W Armstrong, was bigger than most of the preachers you know. Not to mention the black preachers you know. But black preachers have never been as big as the white preachers. That's why I didn't mention none of the black preachers. I'm talking about the big ones. The Jerry Falwells. The Jimmy Swaggarts. The Oral Roberts. The Jim Bakers. These were the super white preachers back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, into the 90s. And Herbert W Armstrong, whose ministry was about the end time. What's going to happen? When is Jesus coming back? And so, if you haven't studied him, if you haven't studied the life and times and the work and prophecies of Herbert W Armstrong, then you haven't really studied this subject. And Herbert W Armstrong touched a lot of black preachers. Herbert W Armstrong is even responsible for some of the Hebrew Israelite teachers that you might know. Herbert W Armstrong teaching, if you listen to ISUPK and IUIC, they have been watching and paying attention to that white man, Herbert W. Armstrong. Even people like the Israel of God with Elder Bowie, Elder Henry Bowie. He's been bitten and he's been touched by the Caucasian persuasion bug of Herbert W. Armstrong. Herbert W. Armstrong's influence is felt throughout the greater body of Christianity and in the Hebrew Israelite movement and in the Israelite movement. You see, I'm the one that lets you know. They like to come on and talk like they are independent of thought. Like what they say about the end times has no strings. That what they say about the end times, like they're an island. They're sitting out there, you know, an island is a body of water, is a body of land surrounded by water. And so sometimes these Bible teachers on YouTube and off YouTube, they are really citing and regurgitating and aping and upchucking and vomiting and hurling other people's end time prophetic work. But they don't give the credit. They don't give the credit. But when you know the founder's work and you listen to other Johnny-come-lately work, you see, oh, okay, Elder Bowie was certainly influenced by Herbert W. Armstrong. Oh, Yahweh ben Yahweh was certainly influenced by Herbert W. Armstrong. Oh, these guys, ISUPK, they certainly were influenced by the work of this great white man, Herbert W. Armstrong. But Herbert W. Armstrong, as brilliant as he was, as brilliant biblically as Herbert W. Armstrong was, he was a simple man and he was a flawed man. Herbert W. Armstrong was so flawed that the records show that Herbert W. Armstrong was an incestuous pedophile. What? You mean the man, Herbert W. Armstrong, who was bigger than Jerry Falwell and Jimmy Swaggart and Oral Roberts and Jim Baker? Incestuous. Incestuous means you was fucking your children or your child. And so when you do the record, when you do the math, as great as this man, Herbert W. Armstrong, appeared to be, biblically speaking, there came a day when Herbert W. Armstrong and his wife were divorcing. Herbert W. Armstrong was trying to prove that his wife was unfaithful. She was giving up the pussy to others. That she was not a faithful wife. Why did he open up Pandora's box? I'll never know. But when Herbert W. Armstrong challenged the veracity of his ex-wife's fidelity, she got in court and she challenged that man, Herbert W. Armstrong, by throwing her own little infidelity argument out there by stating that Herbert W. Armstrong had been having sex with his youngest daughter, biological daughter, for some 10 years into their ministry in the beginning. Now, there are others who say it's not true, but by all accounts, it was true. It definitely came out in court records. It definitely came out in newspaper articles. It definitely made Herbert W Armstrong stop trying to claim that his wife was not true. The infidelity that Herbert W Armstrong tried to throw on his wife as a means to get out of the marriage, she threw his incestuous relationship with their biological daughter back at him. I've read the reports, I've seen the articles, and I have to lean on the side of, yeah, he probably did that. Because once the ex-wife threw in the incestuous shit, Herbert W Armstrong stopped talking about that infidelity shit. They came to a mutual understanding and agreement during the divorce proceedings. That's just a little knick-knack. I got to bring him down a little bit. A little bit. As great as Herbert W Armstrong is, the man that held sway, the man that was copied by people like Yahweh Ben Yahweh and Elder Bowie and ISUPK and IUIC and many others. The man was incestuous toward his youngest daughter. Gotta put that out there. But after Herbert W Armstrong, we're talking Bible prophecy, end time prophecy. Another great white preacher came along, Dr. Jack Van Epp, and his wife Rexella. Again, they were on TV throughout the 70s and 80s, 90s, up to about the year 2006, 2007. And I gotta say, I rather enjoyed listening to Dr. Jack Van Epp. Dr. Jack Van Epp is called the, basically, I forgot what they call him, but he's like a Bible God. Like nobody knows more scripture than Dr. Jack Van Epp. I mean, his display of biblical passages and where to go, and the rapid fire sensation as he would bring it when he's on TV. He'd go this scripture, that scripture. He would look you right in the camera and say, go here, go da da dee da 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 da. He had an astounding knowledge of where things were in the Bible. He had an amazing knowledge of Bible prophecies. Again, his name was Dr. Jack Van Epp. And his co-host, a beautiful white woman, a beautiful blonde white woman. She was beautiful into her old age. Her name was Rexella. She was named after her father, whose name was Rex. Now you put the Ella, Rexella. How you put the Ella or the Etta whenever there's a man's name and they want to put a woman's name on it, they put the Ella or the Etta, like a Gwen, and an Etta becomes a Gwenetta, a Rex, and they have a child, and he wants as a girl child, and he wants to name himself after his child, so Rexella. But Rexella, I remember watching them in my 20s and going, wow, they're smart about the Bible. And Rexella was a pretty little white woman. Oh, she was gorgeous. Nice little voice, spoke, well-spoken. Rexella. I always wondered why her name was Rexella. I looked it up. I Googled it. She was named after her father, whose name was Rex. So, Rexella. But Dr. Jack Van Epp is another great teacher of biblical prophecy. That's right. This is the introduction, and I wanted to start out by just talking about, this word eschatology. And I'm actually amazed that a particular Bible teacher, I can't call him a Bible teacher, eschatology. Some of these YouTube Bible teachers, they stumble upon words. They stumble upon words. And they put those words in their vocabulary, even though they can hardly read. But every now and then, to try to make themselves look important or intelligent, they find a word that's not in the Bible, but they swear by it. They swear by it. They might not like the word Trinity, because the word Trinity is not in the Bible. But they would do bullshit series on words like eschatology. Let me show you that word. Here it is right here. Eschatology. You want to know how to say it? Let's turn our volume up so we can say it. How do we say the word?
Eschatology. 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 Eschatology.
And so the word eschatology means the part of theology concerned with death, judgment, and the final destiny of the soul and of humankind. So don't get crazy when you hear the word eschatology. And just because a person might have come across this word eschatology, dealing with the end time prophecies, don't let them don't. Yeah, here it is. Here's another definition. In biblical terms, eschatology is the study of last things or end times, encompassing themes like the second coming of Christ, resurrection, judgment, and the ultimate destiny of humanity in the world. It explores both individual eschatology, death and the afterlife, and cosmic eschatology, the end of the current age and establishment of God's eternal kingdom. Got it? Okay. Now, most religions are concerned with end time prophecy. Yes, they are. I said most religions are concerned with end time prophecy. But if you think back to church, the book that's supposed to be about end times, the book of Revelation, if you think about your church experience, Sunday school, church, your Christian upbringing, if you think about it, you probably know very little about the book of Revelation. The book of Revelation is the ultimate end times drama. Yet most preachers and pastors and reverends, they don't get too deep. They don't get too deep in the book of Revelation. That's why I mentioned Herbert W Armstrong. That's why I mentioned Dr. Jack Van Epp, because people like people like Ellen G. White, and Dr. Herbert W Armstrong and Dr. Jack Van Epp, they specialize in that book of Revelation, that book of Daniel. They specialize in those end time prophecies. Whereas the average preacher the average Christian preacher and the average, AME, First Baptist, Second Baptist, they stray away from books like Revelations and Daniel. They're too deep. They're too scary. The symbology and metaphors and similes, it's too much. It's too scary. They don't want to drive away their parishioners and members. So they stay far, far away from books like Revelation and Daniel. The closest they will get to talking end time talk is Matthew 24, where Jesus has a conversation about the end of the world and what you should expect. And that's where we're going to start. You see, there was a YouTube preacher not long ago, a week or so ago, and he was talking about the end times. And his co-host, a raggedy mouth chick, she made reference to Matthew 24 without knowing where that was at. She made reference to Jesus' conversation about the end times, to which the nigga that was trying to teach her, he barked at her and told her, let's go to Matthew, let's go to Daniel. It's about the Roman Empire. He started trying to give that baby a steak instead of some breast milk. Isaiah 28, verses 9 through 11. Whom shall he teach knowledge? And whom shall he make to understand doctrine? See, this is where, and what separates the great Bible teachers from the trash Bible teachers. I said a week ago, a woman was on a YouTube show as a co-host, and she would ask the teacher on that show, King, what's that where Jesus was talking about telling his disciples about the end time? And what did he shoot back? What did he shoot back? You confused her. Just go to Daniel. Just go to Daniel 9. It's about Rome. It's so easy. All you got to do is see which empire is ruling now. It's the Roman Empire. A bunch of bullshit. And a bunch of meat. Somewhere in this woman YouTuber's life, she sort of kind of remembered that Jesus spoke on the end time prophecies. And when she asked her king, this fellow YouTuber, can we go to it? He did not want to go to it because he was hell-bent on trying to make her understand end-time eschatological prophecies from the book of Daniel. And I submit to you all, Daniel is high science. Daniel is high science when it comes to end-time prophecies. But if the fuck nigga had listened to this woman and had engaged her and taken her over to the book of Matthew, it could have been a jump-off point, a starting point for his book of Daniel conversation. Because indeed, in Matthew 24, where Jesus is having a conversation with the 12 disciples about the end of the world, even Jesus mentions the book of Daniel. He mentions something called the abomination of desolation. But when you don't understand how to apply. As a teacher, when you don't know how to apply Isaiah 28, starting with 9, where it asks the question, whom shall he teach knowledge? And whom shall he make to understand doctrine? Them that are weaned from the milk and drawn from the breast. For precept must be upon precept, precept upon precept, line upon line, line upon line, here a little and there a little. This is the foundation of any good teacher. Knowing how to start out with giving people, weaning them off of the milk and drawing off the breast. You don't give a baby a steak, you give them milk because they have no teeth. Their digestive system is not ready for solid food. You give them a precept upon a precept, and then another precept upon a precept, and then a line upon a line, and then another line upon a line, and then here a little, and then there a little. But when you're a bum-ass YouTube teacher, you might know the scripture, but you don't know how to make the scripture applicable when you clearly are talking to an idiot, a Bible idiot on your platform. A straight idiot. And then when this Bible idiot, this woman, remembers something from days gone by about Jesus talking about the end of the world, instead of you saying, oh yeah, let me show you, sister, that's Matthew 24, verse 3, where Jesus' disciples asked him about the end of the world. Instead of being the gentle teacher and weaning them off of milk and drawing them off the breast, you want to run your raggedy ass, your monkey ass over to Daniel, a book of high science, high eschatological science, and try to make this babe, this neophyte, this newbie, understand what you think you understand. And so, we will start off our end time series with Jesus. I'm going to teach what that bum ass nigga Israel doctrine, what he barked on Gwinnetta about. He barked on Gwinnetta about Matthew 24. He didn't want to show Matthew 24, as though this chick, this trout mouth chick, Gwinnetta Greer, as though she was ready for the high eschatological science of the book of Daniel. She's nowhere near ready for that shit. And because Israel Doctrine is a bum-ass Bible teacher himself, he tries to take her on a biblical ride, a biblical roller coaster that she don't even have her goddamn seatbelts on. And so she gets frustrated and she just shuts up and says, I'm just going to ask. I ain't going to ask. I'll just sit here. Go ahead, King. He's an impatient Bible teacher. I said Israel Doctrine is an impatient Bible teacher. He doesn't know how to take baby steps. I mean, the very fact that his queen, his sideshow freak, Gwinnetta, calls the book of Psalms the book of Palms. If that's not enough to let you know that you're dealing with somebody who is uneducated in the Bible, the fact that this woman once said, I thought the word Hebrew wasn't in the Bible. You're dealing with a low-class, low-count woman that knows nothing about the Bible. And there's nothing wrong with that. The only reason I get on that woman's case is because she feigns like she's giving us the knowledge. She feigns like she's teaching us. That she broaches subjects that she is ill-equipped to deal with or handle or have a conversation about. That's why I stay on her ass. Because she calls content going over to other YouTubers' pages and stealing their Enoch content and putting it on her channel as her content. And when a real Bible teacher like Khalil Amani comes out and speaks on what she did, she wants to accuse me of going behind her. Bitch, you went behind another YouTuber to steal their information. And you don't even speak on the information that you steal and filch and pilfer. And so, Gwinnetta Greer, and I'm only bringing up these names because they are good for teaching. The person, if you don't know who I'm talking about, don't worry. She's on YouTube. She thinks she knows the Bible. She does. These people are, when I call their name, I call them as a teaching tool. Israel Doctrine. If you don't know who Israel Doctrine is, don't worry. I call his name as a teaching tool to show how not to teach Bible. That when you're dealing with someone that think that the book of Psalms is pronounced the book of Palms, yeah, she said that. It tells you everything you need to know about that person's Bible knowledge, that they have none. But when you want to teach Bible, teaching Bible is about patience and delivery and walking step by step and drawing from milk from the breast, taking your time. It's not about throwing big words out like eschatology, because trust me, Gwinnetta Greer has never heard of the word eschatology. And Gwinnetta Greer, I guarantee you to this very day, today, in June the 6th, the 7th, whatever it is, she still has no idea what that big-ass word eschatology that Israel Doctrine has on its thumbnails. She still could not define that word. But Israel Doctrine, wanting to show that he read something, that he tripped, stumbled, and fell upon a big scholarly word, instead of saying end times, he'd rather say eschatology to make you think that he's on top of his biblical scholarship game. He's not. But a week or so ago, Gwinnetta Greer, his co-host, had a remembrance and asked Israel Doctrine, hey, didn't Jesus speak? Didn't Jesus speak on end time? For some reason, that shit annoyed the fuck out of Israel Doctrine. And he barked at her and told her, Daniel, it's so simple. All you got to look at is the kingdoms that fell. The Persians, the Assyrians, the Greeks. And we're in the Roman Empire now. All you got to do is look at the different, it tells you right there which is what. And when you get to the Roman Empire, that's the sign of the last empire before Jesus returns. No, fuck nigga. That's high eschatological science you spitting at a goddamn newborn baby. You should have took her to Matthew 24 and you should have walked her through. And when you got to Matthew 24, 15, then it would have mentioned the shit you trying to talk about in the book of Daniel. And so let's just get right into it for the next 15, 20 minutes on this. And we are just doing the introduction here. Again, it's not about them. It ain't about them. They just make for a good teaching. And so, this wanting to understand the end of the world, or is there even a thing called the end of the world? Is it real? Is it mythology? Is it make-believe? Is it fairy tale? But the great religions, the great Abrahamic faiths, whether it be Judaism, Christianity, or Islam, they believe in a great getting up morning. They believe in a day of reckoning. They believe in the end times. As it goes with Judaism, or the Hebrew Israelites, or the Israelites, Judaism, they believe in a third temple. They believe in a Messiah coming back. And all humanity will rally around the Jewish nation as the Jewish Messiah, Mashiach, sits on high. And then there is Christianity. In Christianity, they believe in the second coming of Jesus and that he will come back and we will see him and meet him in the clouds, and we will see New Jerusalem coming down from heaven to earth, and that Jesus would establish 1,000-year, a millennium reign right here on earth. And then there is Islam. They believe, some of them, that although the Quran is the seal, the last revelation to humanity, and that Prophet Muhammad is the last messenger to humanity, they do believe in a great Mahdi. The great Mahdi. I like that word, Mahdi. The great messenger of Allah will come. And the great messenger, or the great Mahdi, will make the planet Earth universally Islamic. They all believe in this great showdown. They all believe in this showdown at the OK Corral, if you will. So it was with the disciples of Jesus. They too were bitten by the eschatological, the end time bug. And they came to Brother Jesus and they wanted some answers and some understanding. And this is where we are going to start our end time dig, okay? Let's just get right into a few of the reading. I said Matthew 24. This is where Gwinnett Greer wanted to go, but Israel Doctrine barked at her, blew her off, and took her way over there to the more advanced stuff in the book of Daniel. And so we start chapter 24. It's called the destruction of the temple and signs before the end, you see. And Jesus went out and departed from the temple, and his disciples came to him for to show him the building of the temple. And Jesus said unto them, see ye not all these things? Verily or truly I say unto you, there shall not be left here one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. And as Jesus, sat upon the Mount of Olives, the disciples came unto him privately, saying, here it is, y'all, tell us, when shall these things be? And what shall be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the world? Got it? This is what Gwinnett Greer was trying to ask Israel Doctrine, but instead of letting Brother Jesus speak. See all those red letters? Brother Jesus, he gives a long colloquy, a long soliloquy, a long trope on the end of the world. For some reason, this so-called Bible teacher, Israel Doctrine, he didn't want to let Jesus speak. I said he didn't want to let Jesus speak and talk about the signs of the coming of Jesus and of the end of the world. He wanted to go on some Daniel shit. But if Israel Doctrine had just read on in this same chapter 24, verse 15, when ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place. See, even Jesus will reference the book of Daniel and Daniel the prophet and something called the abomination of desolation. What a great teaching that would have been if Israel Doctrine would have gone through the book of Matthew 24 and waited. And by the time he got to 24, maybe she would have been ready to take a peep at the book of Daniel. But going back, verse 3, and as Jesus, sat upon the Mount of Olives, the disciples came unto him privately, saying, tell us, when shall these things be? And what shall be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the world? Oh, it's about to get deep, y'all. I said it's about to get deep, y'all. And so, even the disciples of Jesus had a fascination and fixation with end-time prophecy. They were consumed knowing that Jesus was going to go away. They want to know when was he coming back. What would be the signs in the world that they could look at and know that the end of the world is nigh or near unto them? This scripture might give you a hint of why the disciples never wrote shit down. In part two, we are going to get real deep into Matthew 24. But I want to just end this by showing that the disciples of Jesus themselves, they wanted to know what would be the sign of your coming. What shall be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the world? This is what Gwinnett Greer was asking Israel Doctrine, but the fuck nigga did not want to deal with. He wanted to take her over and deal with the high science of the book of Daniel and his eschatological viewpoint. That ain't good teaching. See, I was on vacation while they were doing all this. I was in Tampa. and Daytona Beach and Miami sunbathing, listening to this bullshit. But I'm back to give it to you rough, rugged, and raw. To give it to you straight, no chaser. And so we're going to end with the fact that Jesus is about to school these niggas, the 12 disciples. Jesus is about to go through a litany, a list of shit that they can look to and watch and know that the end of the world is near unto them. And as we're going to find out, that the disciples truly thought that they were living in the last days. And so it is with people today. Every generation since Jesus' day has thought that they were the generation that would see the second coming of Jesus. Every generation. Excluding and barring none. Every generation after Jesus thought they were the blessed one. And so it is today in churches throughout America. They preach that we are living in the end times. This is why people like Herbert W Armstrong, he swore he was going to see Jesus before he died. Dr. Jack Van Epp, he swore he was going to see Jesus before he died. They all come and they all go. And I guarantee you, the YouTuber known as Israel Doctrine, he's over there right now. He swears he too is in the blessed generation that's going to see Jesus in his lifetime. They all believe this. And they all born and they all are going to die. Yes. The disciples of Jesus, oh, they were feeling good about their chances at seeing the resurrected and risen Christ and seeing Israel, the 12 tribes, the New Jerusalem, all that stuff. But that's the nature of humanity. That is the nature of us, humans. We always put ourselves at the center of the universe. And we always think that we are so self-important that if some crazy shit that is written about supposed to happen, it's going to happen on our watch. That's how self-important we are. Trust me. All those ISUPK, General Yohana, Captain Tazariak, all those IUIC, Elder Nathaniel, all those Yahweh bin Yahweh people, all those Israelites, many of these Christians today, they think they are living in the blessed and holy generation where all shall be fulfilled. That's the self-importance we have. That now that we are born, now that we are halfway woke, now that we are paying attention to the scriptures, we think it's going to happen on our watch. That's how we think. All those people in the Israel of God under Elder Bowie and them, they think they're going to see the second coming in their lifetime. So it is now. So it was with the original disciples of Jesus. And dare I say that Jesus absolutely misled the 12 disciples. He misled them so much that those niggas wouldn't even sit down and pen and write the sayings of Jesus, first-hand eyewitnesses. We had to wait till somebody named Matthew according to Matthew, and Mark according to Mark, and Luke according to Luke, and John according to John. We had to wait for the anonymous authorship of the four Gospels, who were not first-hand eyewitnesses of the man they called Jesus. That's why it says according to. And this is why the 12 disciples did not write their own books, because they were so misled by Jesus' very words. Because Jesus would go on to say, he would look all of them in their eyes, and he would say, this generation shall not pass until all be fulfilled. Let me show you that, and then I'm out. This is the deception. Jesus would say, verily, verily means truly, I say unto you, this generation shall not pass till all these things be fulfilled. Well, yeah, we're going to talk about that in part 2. We definitely going to talk about it. But Jesus left them with unfulfilled desires and unfulfilled dreams. Jesus was the first Langston Hughes, when Langston Hughes wrote the great poem, A Dream Deferred. This was the great dream deferred that we shall talk about in part 2. We'll talk about Langston Hughes' A Dream Deferred, and how the 12 disciples dream of a resurrected and risen Christ, and paradise was simply a dream deferred by what some would say was a false prophet, because Jesus' promise to the disciples was deferred. All right, y'all. Come back. We on it. Series time. I'll talk to you soon. I love you all for a better world. Take care.